morning. It is Wednesday, January 28th, 2015. This is your morning edition on I-24 News. Coming up later today, the Israeli Defense Forces respond with rocket fire. 2 rockets which landed in Israel yesterday, and they bombed with fresh airstrikes in Syria. A fierce snowstorm brings life to a halt in Northeast America, but were predictions of a historic blizzard slightly too dramatic? And later on the show, last week saw stellar success for Israeli startups. We'll take a closer look. Good morning, I'm Yael Avi. We begin in the north of Israel, which is on high alert this morning following an exchange fire across the Syrian border. The Israeli Air Force struck Syrian army artillery targets overnight in response to an earlier rocket attack carried out on the Golan Heights and Mount Hermon. At around noon yesterday, 4 rockets landed in the Golan Heights, prompting Israel to fire back with heavy artillery and airstrikes. Though no one was injured on any side, the flare-up caused the army to order civilians to remain indoors and evacuate the Mount Hermon ski resort. Joining me in studio to discuss the escalation in the north is Haaretz senior military analyst Amir Oren. Amir, good morning to you.
Good morning.
I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev. Tal, good morning to you. Before we break this down, though, let's take a look at the following report about what happened in the north of Israel yesterday.
4 rockets were fired from Syria to Israeli territory Tuesday, interrupting the sound of silent tension which prevails in the region. 2 of the rockets exploded in Israel's Golan Heights, prompting the Israel Defense Forces to respond with artillery fire. There were no injuries in Israel, but casualties were reported on the Syrian side but remain unconfirmed. Visitors were evacuated from the Mount Hermon ski resort, and roadblocks were set up in the Golan Heights to stop traffic. Earlier this month, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah warned that the organization's capabilities in Syria have not waned.
If the Israelis think that the resistance is weakened or exhausted, or that its capabilities and readiness have been compromised, they are completely deluded and will find out that if they decide to build on these ideas, it will be a foolish act, not just a mistake.
Several days after Nasrallah's announcement, 6 Hezbollah operatives were killed in Quneitra, including Jihad Mournier, son of Hezbollah operative Imad Mournier, whose killing in 2008, allegedly by Israel, was considered a considerable blow to the organization. As is common practice, Israel made no comment on the Quneitra attack, but in an interview with Foreign Policy magazine, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad claimed Israel has a political motive to attack Syria.
They are supporting the rebels in Syria. It's very clear, because whenever we made advance in some place, they make an attack in order to undermine the army.
IDF officials said the army detected suspicious movements on the Lebanese side of the border on Sunday, 2 days before the rocket fire. Concerns of renewed shooting from Syria prompted the IDF to beef up artillery and armored forces in the area. Anti-missile batteries of Iron Dome were reportedly deployed in the north as well. Since news spread of the Quneitra attack, fears of a potential escalation along Israel's northern border have been palpable.
We're first joined on the phone by Colonel Peter Lerner, the IDF spokesperson for international media. Good morning to you, Peter. I want to calm, fears in and around the Middle East. We are not looking at war with Syria right now, are we? Peter?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, I want to calm fears in and around the Middle East this morning because the news yesterday reported about the exchange of fire on the Syrian border with the Golan Heights of Israel was severely covered in most Israeli media, and areas were evacuated, etc. But is it safe to say that we are not looking at full-blown war with Syria this morning?
Well, we certainly hope not, but as the military, we have to take necessary precautions to be prepared for escalation. What we saw yesterday with 2 rockets that were launched from Syrian territory, from the area which is completely under the control of Syria, of the Syrian military and Hezbollah, actually from positions of the Syrian military, is unacceptable. And that is why we responded immediately on the spot and sent a clear message overnight to the Syrian regime by attacking and striking Syrian artillery positions that potentially could be a threat. And our pilots indeed reported that they had completed their mission.
Now, what was targeted, again, is the question. Overnight, Israeli Air Force targeted artillery stations, I believe, in Syria. You will correct me if I'm wrong in a second. It is also safe to say, though, that, I mean, it's not a secret that Syria is a fractured country in the midst of a civil war. So what was attacked overnight by Israeli Air Force? What targets were attacked in Syria?
Yeah, well, the type of targets which I can confirm that we struck were indeed artillery positions that could potentially be used like yesterday's attack against us. And I think what is really important about the strikes last night or in the early hours of this morning is that Syria is a sovereign state. They have responsibility. And them letting Hezbollah or other organizations to use their positions to carry out rocket attacks against Israel, as far as we're concerned, is completely unacceptable. And we need to operate against that to prevent. There were 1,000 people on Mount Hermon yesterday that were potentially under a threat because of this rocket fire.
Right. And when the situation up north this morning, more army being deployed, what are we looking at this morning up north?
So we're taking the necessary precautions to be prepared for potential escalation. We hope it's not a method. We can't just hope that things will be safe there. We need to take the necessary steps. The IDF is present, is able to maintain those defensive positions along the line of the border. Indeed, over the last few years, we have built up a substantial barrier and have visual intelligence and striking capabilities at the level of the division and the brigade there in order to defend the positions. And this was what we saw in the immediate response yesterday after the strike. We're taking those steps. That is what we intend to do. We intend to protect the civilians of the state of Israel.
Colonel Lerner, thank you very much for being with us this morning. As we mentioned, the North on high alert. Joining us in studio is also Dr. Benedetta Berti of the NSS. I want to start with you for a second, and Amir Onem Haaretz, senior military analyst, and of course Tal Shalev. If you've heard him alongside with me, Colonel Peter Lerner, responding to the danger that Syria might pose. But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. It's no secret that Syria is in the midst of a civil war. We're theorizing here. I mean, who fired yesterday? Do we even know? Can we even know at Israel?
Right. Well, I think we can take a pretty educated guess if we look at what has been happening since the January 18th Israeli operation against Hezbollah, mid to senior leadership, including Iranians that were with them in the convoy. If you see it through that lens, then this attack would be likely come from Hezbollah ranks and would be likely part of a retaliation campaign. I don't think this would be the only retaliation act. Let's say it would be one of them. Right. So I think we can take a pretty educated guess that it comes from the Hezbollah side and that with the consent, tacit support of the Syrian army. I think that's an educated guess. At the same time, I would agree with you. If you look at what's going on in the south of Syria and in the Syrian Golan, yes, it's definitely not controlled at this point in time by
Bashar Assad.
Absolutely not. If you look at who's facing Israel, then you have rebel groups, and specifically you have actually Jabhat al-Nusra. However, I would stress, I don't think this attack comes from them. From their perspective, there is a lot of interest in keeping quiet with Israel and focusing on their fight internally.
And Amir Oren, time to turn to you on this one. It was actually I believe it was Haaretz newspaper that I read that there was intel information when it comes to this specific attack that Dr. Berti is mentioning about a week or 10 days ago in Syria, that there was intel information that Hezbollah is trying to open a new front in that area against Israel. And again, we're only theorizing. As we heard Peter Lerner say, everything is potentially risky, potentially dangerous. But would that be something that, on theory, that's a new front of Hezbollah up there? And again, can we even know?
We can know, perhaps not with absolute certainty, but we can know. What Israel is facing up north is the trio of Iran, Hezbollah, and Syria, and it doesn't really matter where do you delineate the borders between those forces as they are aligned against Israel. Now, we are approaching the Super Bowl this coming weekend, so we may try to use the vernacular in that Israel is not trying to get into the Super Bowl with this trio, and it is trying to deflate the football, as is now customary to say in the United States. What Israel has tried to signal in its reaction, both yesterday around noon and then overnight in the other strike,
right.
because earlier it struck back with artillery, and overnight it was the airstrike.
It was the airstrike.
Is that it is trying to limit the exchange, a tit for tat.
Right.
There is no escalation, and it's very important to note the language used both by the Defense Minister Yalon, the Army spokesman, and Colonel Lerner. These were potentially dangerous targets.
Said twice, actually, 3 times by Peter Lerner, potential.
They could have threatened, they may threaten in the future. So what Israel is trying to say to Assad is, listen, we are not going all out for you personally or for your regime. We are only hitting in the border area. We also know that you cannot control the other forces, the rebels. When shots were fired across the border from rebels' positions, Israel did not hit back at the Syrian regime. So this is a very limited response in order to de-escalate.
No, and before we go to the diplomatic, I think, ramifications this has internally tell with you, but Dr. Birdie, I want to ask you, this is something that has been sitting on my mind this morning, is that over the course of the last 3 years, with the Syria civil war, we have seen these shots, and that's for both of you, fired from across the border, right?
Yes,
we have. I mean, this happen.
Not every day.
Yeah.
Crossfire. There's been a couple of skirmishes. Last year, there was a brief tit for tat between Israel and Hezbollah that also occurred to the Syrian Golan, because Hezbollah did not want to do it through Lebanon, because that would be a signal of escalation. Again, agreeing with what has been said before.
But Israel doesn't want the zone or the strip across from its border to be a no man's land, so that other people might try to sneak in. Settlements, civilian settlements, are very close by, and it takes only a squad to smuggle weapons and perpetrate a terror act. So Israel tries to signal to everybody, even though it does help some of the rebels, some of the more moderate ones. It gives medical care to whoever is. Nevertheless, Israel doesn't want it to be such an open border that some people get nasty ideas.
Nasty ideas in that respect. But, if we try and make sense of all of this, and this is probably the time to turn to you, Tal Shalev, on the diplomatic front of this, irrespective of the fact that, and that we made sense of it this morning, war is not breaking out right now on the northern Israeli border. Everything is potential and it's on high alert. But political capital is to be gained out of this in many ways. The Labour Party, one of the Labour Party leaders, Yitzhak Herzog, had the following statement to say yesterday, I believe. It's coming up, and we'll be reading this in a second, because Yitzhak Herzog, leader of the Zionist camp, under Netanyahu, we are experiencing a real weakening of the sense of personal security among Israeli citizens. From looking at that statement, Tal Shalev, Benjamin Netanyahu had many things to say as well. What is to be gained out of this? And are we, and I'm theorizing with all of us in the studio right now, are we looking at heightened potential risks that are being used because we are close to elections at this point?
Well, I think the fact that we are close to elections just makes everything a bit more sensitive, exactly as Amir was describing the sensitivities on the border. There's also a sensitive, delicate line that politicians can be using these security events, both Netanyahu and both Herzog. On the one hand, Herzog cannot, like on the previous strike that we had last week, both Herzog and his comrade Livni, none of them really attacked Netanyahu for having political considerations, and the only person who did doubt Netanyahu's sincerity was former Army General Yoav Gallant, currently running for the Knesset as a politician on Moshe Kahlon's list, and he was slammed. The reaction was Israel does not want to hear this kind of speculations on the eve of elections, and the cynicism is many times brushed away, the Israeli cynicism is many times brushed away quite abruptly when we're talking about a very tense or security situation. But yes, in any case, the common assumption should be that every time the discourse gets back to be security or diplomacy or something that has to do with foreign policy, Netanyahu is one that has to gain. But as we hear Herzog stressing the weakened sense of security, we might remind that in the past there were a few election campaigns that have been decided after a sense of this kind of weakened sense of security did in the end, some in the past did cause regime changes inside Israel. Inside Israel,
but Amiron, yes.
Herzog is frustrated because the trend is for Labor or the Zionist camp as a party list. But personally, in the public opinion polls, Netanyahu still stands higher as a potential prime minister re-elected vis-a-vis Herzog, again, personally. So for Herzog, it does make sense to try and portray Netanyahu as Mr. Insecurity. Netanyahu always, of course, tries to depict himself as Mr. Security, and Herzog, following on what Tal said, we all remember the 1992 elections in which Rabin won over Shamir after a series of incidents where, for instance, a girl was stabbed in Bat Yam, not far from this studio, and there was a sense in the general population that people are helpless, that the government is not doing enough to protect yourself or your family, regardless of national security, of wars, what happens in the streets. So, yes, it's a calculated political move on Herzog's part. Herzog is also frustrated because he says, look at my personal record. I am a reserve major in the intelligence corps. Netanyahu was only a captain, one rank lower in a unit. Why is he considered such a warrior? And I'm not. So there you go.
No. You know, the fact that the military history of political leaders is still factoring into the political race that Israel is looking at right now. But to bring it all back home, and Dr. Birdie, I'm asking you again, when it comes to Hezbollah right now up north, and if as Amiron said, if the idea is that potentially there's a risk there, potentially it's dangerous. Does Hezbollah even have the capital to open a front up north against Israel as it's fighting for Bashar Assad in many ways, as it's entangled completely in this very, very messy war in Syria?
Well, I would argue that's the problem with the perception, meaning the reality is, yes, Hezbollah has been very busy supporting the Bashar al-Assad regime. On top of that, Hezbollah has been also very busy fighting its own war against jihadist groups in Lebanon, which is also something the organization is very much invested in. So yeah, they're basically already fighting in two fronts. Therefore, they don't have really an interest at this point in going into an all-out war with Israel. At the same time, if Israel continues to act on this perception, the perception that no matter what he does, Hezbollah is not in a position to retaliate, then there's huge potential for miscalculations, because eventually Hezbollah will be in a position in which public opinion, internal pressure would force it to retaliate in a way that could, in turn, trigger another response from Israel. In other words, yes, Hezbollah doesn't want a war. Yes, Israel doesn't want a war. But if they keep going at it, eventually, it could actually lead to a war.
It could actually flare up.
Yeah, look at how amazing or perhaps natural the situation is. It used to be that Lebanon was the playground for Israel in Syria to clash in. And now Israel and Hezbollah, a Lebanese entity, are doing it in Syria.
That's
and Israel doesn't retaliate against Hezbollah in Lebanon. It keeps it limited to Syria.
The tectonic shift of the Middle East. Well, thank you all for being with me in studio on this subject as we move along to more messy stories in and around the region. East spared mayhem from no one yesterday as gunmen stormed a luxury hotel in Libya's capital, killing 9 people, including 4 foreigners. 2 of the assailants died, at least one of them by detonating explosives in a suicide vest. A group calling itself Islamic State Tripoli Province claimed responsibility over Twitter for yesterday's attack on the Corinthia Hotel. It's a seaside complex popular with foreign businessmen, diplomats, and journalists in Libya. The group designated its siege of the hotel as the Battle of Anas al-Libi, an apparent reference to an accused al-Qaeda operative, a Libyan, who died earlier this month in a hospital in the United States, where he was due to go on trial in federal court on charges for helping to carry out the 1998 attacks on American embassies in Kenya and Tanzania that killed 224 people. Now, this new ISIS front is one that comes on the heels of the battle for Kobane, ending supposedly on another front with the militant group on the Syrian-Turkish border. But as one closes, so it seems another one opens. Still with me in studio, obviously, Dr. Birdie and Amiron. Let's look at the following report about Kobane and break it down from there.
It took months of intense fighting, but Kobane is no longer under Islamic State control. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, Kurdish rebels from the YPG group have taken full control of the embattled city, separating Syria and Turkey. If the reports are correct, this is a huge defeat for the extremist jihadist group, which has now lost a major strategic point.
Our war is against the terrorists of Islamic State. The world should support Kobane, the Peshmerga and the soldiers of the Kurdish guerrilla, YPG and YPJ.
Kobane was the focus of the coalition airstrikes ever since it launched its campaign last September in order to assist the Kurds and other opposition groups in their battle against the IS. Last week, the YPG scored another achievement when they broke a key IS supply line between Mosul in northern Iraq and strongholds to the west near Syria.
Peshmerga forces are now combing the area for remaining members of IS, who are left with only two options, either to be killed or to flee. They cannot stay in the area.
The Islamic State still controls vast territories in Syria and Iraq, including Mosul, Iraq's second largest city, and the northwestern Syrian city of Raqqa, known for its oil facilities. Nonetheless, the Kurds have perhaps closed a significant chapter in the battle for Iraq and Syria. But at the same time, they have perhaps opened a new deadly chapter in the region.
Now, as we're, Dr. Benedetta Berti of the NSS, as we're theorizing this morning on potentially hazardous and horrible things in the region, the Kobane front closes, but how does it take? I mean, this thing I think that boggles our mind when it comes to ISIS, it took 4 or 5 months in that city with the assistance of coalition airstrikes to get this group out of Kobane. Is this really such a coup?
Well, let's start with saying they made it. I don't think Kobane per se is the most strategic point ever, but they made it one, which it's interesting. ISIS, they decided to make Kobane strategic for them, meaning that in the past 134 days or however it took for them to be kicked out of Kobane, they made this one of the jewels in the crowns of their campaign, so to speak. They invested a lot in talking about it on their social media. They sent a lot of people.
They sent a hostage, John Cantillum, and actually a British journalist to show how Kobane is in the hands of ISIS.
So this was kind of a way they were showing their prowess, showing their power, doing power projections. So being kicked out of there, it's something that does somewhat affect their morale and credibility. At the same time, yes, you're right, it took a long time, over 130 days. It took serious investment from the Kurdish fighters, and the majority of the strikes that have been conducted so far in Syria, the vast majority, around 70% of them, have been actually focused on Kobane, helping the Kurds to kick out ISIS. So what can we learn from this? Then yes, ISIS momentum has been broken, but they're by no means defeated. They still control a large portion of territory. They have the weapons. They still have the fighters.
They still have a third of Iraq in their hands.
And a third of Syria.
And a third of Syria.
I think we're in it for the long haul on this one.
For the long haul, yes.
Far-flung and God-forsaken places like Iwo Jima in World War II or Khe Sanh in the Vietnam War take a meaning far beyond their real significance because they were made by the media and by the parties to the conflicts themselves. They were made a test of wills. Now, in Kobane, it was important because it was a destination, a target that ISIS wanted, because the coalition, along with Turkish help, did not want
and because we in the media could cover it from the Turkish side of the border that was fairly safe in many ways. I mean, that's part of it.
The important thing here is that the trend has been reversed, that the irreversible, so to speak, irreversible march of ISIS towards new glory, new conquests have been blocked. Now, during this time, it's true that more than 100 days have passed, but during this time, the Americans have been training more and more Iraqi brigades and more local militias along with the Kurds. The Turks have been helping logistically by keeping a supply line open.
Right.
And there have been moves against the financial infrastructure that ISIS has. So one has to look at it longer.
In the long run, as Dr. Birdie said, this is everybody's in it for the long haul. But I mean, really quickly in the time that we have, I'm wondering out loud as we're seeing, Israel trying, pointing fingers, Hezbollah, whatnot. This new player in the region, and Tripoli's attack yesterday that, was being claimed responsibility for by an ISIS-related group, which is seeming to be some sort of a franchise that everybody's taking the credit for if you do some sort of an attack. Is this not the big new foe? And it's interesting to me that I have not seen much rhetoric of ISIS yet against Israel. But isn't that, to a certain degree...
All in good time.
All in good time. Just give them time, exactly.
I mean, it's in their name. The entire name, the Islamic... Now they call themselves the Islamic State, but the name is the Islamic State of Iraq and Sham, which is the Levant, which includes Israel.
But this is unclear to both of us. Aren't we underestimating this foe if it takes 4 months to beat them in a small town like Kobane?
You just mentioned regarding Libya and what transpired there, and Libya has disintegrated into 3 parts anyway. But you just mentioned the 1998 attacks on the embassies.
That supposedly the attack in Libya yesterday was, to avenge. So
we are in a cycle. At that time, President Clinton only responded by missiles against Al Qaeda.
True.
It didn't help. They attacked on 9/11. We here are also in it for the long haul.
Sadly, so it seems. And ISIS won, the million-dollar question, Dr. Birdie, again, I'm asking you to theorize on this potentially hazardous morning. But, can they be beaten without foreign troops on the ground?
Well, I would say the short answer is I don't think so. The longer answer is there is an investment of boosting local troops in Iraq from the Iraqi army side, which is a very difficult investment.
And that could take years. Yeah.
And in Syria, I don't think it makes sense to, disjoin the two fronts. It's very important to have someone confronting ISIS in Syria, and there is the program to train the opposition. However, I have a lot of words about that program. It's going too slowly. They're not getting enough funding. But the vision is there. The execution, in my opinion, is not going as planned. But overall, I think if you want to beat ISIS, you have to address the bigger issue, which is the vacuum of power, the civil war, and the lack of governance.
Yes, and on that happy note, I'm going to thank you both for being with me in studio. When we get back, something different. Weather. Life in the Big Apple comes to a halt as the storm of the century, so to speak, pounded northeastern parts of the U.S., but wasn't as scary as promised. First, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Good morning. Welcome back to I-24's Morning Edition, I-24 News, on this January 28th, 2015. Thank you for staying with us, the place you should be, because it's where we say hello and good morning to Ron Friedman, usually editor of the show, joins me today to discuss news you missed while scanning the headlines, because Tony Grant is on a medical assignment.
About teeth. About teeth,
something like that. I want to start with you, though, before we continue, because we took a closer look at Syria and the Israeli northern border this morning. But ISIS, as we said, expanding their reach in and around. That said, this morning also, or yesterday, they released a clip saying that the clock is ticking on a second Japanese hostage. Right. That supposedly there was a video that was released.
Yeah, there is a new video. They're threatening to kill the hostage today.
Today, and the clock is ticking on that. Let's see if I think we have that video. Let's take a look.
I'm Kenji Goto Jogo. To Rinko, the people of Japan, and the Japanese government. I've been told this is my last message, and I've also been told that the barrier obstructing my freedom is now just the Jordanian government delaying the handover of Sajda. Tells the Japanese government to put all their political pressure on Jordan. Time is now running very short. It is me for her. What seems to be so difficult to understand? She has been a prisoner for a decade, and I've only been a prisoner for a few months. Her for me. A straight exchange.
Ron Friedman with me in studio about the news and the headlines of today. These videos are becoming, first of all, incredibly, kind of a fait accompli of our daily routine.
Right. I mean, we're seeing a new one come out, once a week, once every 2 weeks. Things like this with hostages, just general threats by ISIS leaders. We're seeing it pop up all over the world.
All over the place. And this is, I took a bit of a closer look this morning. He's holding the picture of the Jordanian pilot that was taken, that film was taken hostage by ISIS several weeks ago. There was some sort of a demand to release a female ISIS prisoner who's being held in Jordan, I believe. But the thing is, when ISIS says the clock is ticking, sadly, we have seen that actually come to fruition.
They follow up on their threat, and we know that now that we just saw that the mother of the Jordanian captives issued a request, do everything possible to help her son. Right. And there's a whole controversy whether the media should even be showing these types of videos, whether it's playing into ISIS's hands. But like you said, this is something that we're getting used to already.
We're getting used to, and we can't. My personal feeling, we can't ignore it. But a valid ethical question when it comes to this profession. Moving on to the headlines that we missed while scanning the news or in reverse.
All right. Yes. So yesterday, we did a whole special edition, International Holocaust Remembrance Day. So the ceremonies took place yesterday, a big one in Auschwitz. Somebody who was notably absent from that was Vladimir Putin.
Yes.
He wasn't at the central ceremony in Auschwitz, but he did give an address at the Jewish Museum in Moscow, and he spun his non-attendance there.
It's okay.
Anyway, he was saying his whole spiel was what the fact that he wasn't invited to Poland, and the fact that the Ukraine crisis has got the West and Russia on opposite ends of the political map.
You know what? I got to say though that the fact that International Holocaust Remembrance Day yesterday.
We're seeing his address in the Moscow Jewish Museum.
A lot of really disgruntled, families of survivors who are not really understanding why this has become the stage for political capital, right, which in many ways actually happened yesterday all over Europe.
That's true.
When it comes to this Remembrance Day, and that's a sad note.
He says any attempts to diminish Russia's role in the liberation or in beating the Nazis is an attempt to rewrite history. He compared what's going on in Ukraine now to pre-World War II stuff. He's.
I mean, in his defense, the only thing I'll say, it was the Red Army that liberated Auschwitz.
Right, but there were statements this week that it was Ukrainian soldiers, not Russian soldiers, that were in the vanguard.
And as responsible adults, can we say how awful it is that people are fighting on...
Totally, and this is like 70 years later.
70 years later, with the implications of the Holocaust. But yes, moving along.
Another East-West conflict. Democrats say they'll delay support of new Iran sanctions for 2 months. So this is a story that we've been covering pretty heavily. Yeah.
So when the Democrats say they'll delay support for new Iranian sanctions for 2 months, they're playing into the hands of President Obama.
Right. He already said that he'd veto any such bill anyways. And then late last week, there was this whole controversy over Netanyahu planning to visit there, and it really became a bipartisan issue. So the Democrats are backing off. The bill was still submitted. It doesn't have the support they were expecting. They're going to delay it until March 24th.
And the interesting bit of it is that it became a bipartisan issue. Many will argue due to the involvement of the Israeli Prime Minister in the mix of all of this. But the Democrats are saying we're going to let Obama go ahead to try and complete a nuclear agreement with Iran.
Which is why he said he'd veto. He said any new sanctions now would jeopardize the negotiations with Iran. He's adamant about taking that all the way. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Moving on.
Next, so Obama, back with Obama, he cut short a visit to India, to visit Saudi Arabia. There we see him with the heir to the king. He arrived there for a very short visit with a big contingent, 4.5 hours, and he met with them. He later gave an interview on CNN. He addressed U.S. concerns of human and civil rights in Saudi Arabia, but said that security cooperation often takes precedence, which we all know.
Well, it's a better way of addressing things in the Middle East. I think the argument about the American president is that in 2008 he embraced Hosni Mubarak in Egypt as the great enlightened leader of the Middle East. Half a year later, 2 years later, he disowned himself from the leader. But it's an interesting way of looking at how the West or American presidents are trying to make friends in the Middle East. But both you and I know that, it's kind of a hard process.
He's being pragmatic. There's a lot of issues that they have shared interest. We're talking about Islamic State, Iraq and Syria, coups in Yemen, oil prices.
True, but I'm asking you this, as I'm trying to pick a fight with you, but I'm asking you this, that, I think in the wake of the fact that the United States is trying so hard to strike a deal with Iran, there's also the component of the fact that the two big powers in the Middle East, Saudi and Iran, are not, are going to go at odds at it.
It looks like it's going to be inevitable. Their interests are widely
completely separate. And in both cases, they don't let women drive, so I'm horrified. Yes, and moving on.
Another place where women issues are not addressed is Gaza. United Nations Work and Relief Agency, the main aid group that helps refugees there, is saying they had to stop reconstruction efforts because countries that promised to donate money for that didn't.
I'm glad you said this has actually been going on for the last several weeks, if not months, of no money's being flown.
135 million out of a pledged 720 million. So do the math. UNRWA issued the statement. They didn't point fingers directly at who was responsible and who didn't pay up. But most people apparently didn't pay up, and that means that people are experiencing this winter.
There was this great conference in Egypt. Everybody pledged money and help, and then when it comes really down to it, as we're talking about, and we're looking at a winter in the Middle East and in Gaza that is completely non-existent. It's money.
So they're saying that people have already, people are suffering from hypothermia. Children have died because of that. This is a humanitarian crisis that was supposedly on the way to being solved.
And not even close to it.
Right. Do you have time?
Sadly, we don't. But you are locked in studio with me because both of us are from North America, and the next story deals directly with our concerns. Yes, moving along. A powerful winter storm continued to lash the northeastern parts of the U.S. overnight, dumping expected record snowfalls in some parts of the region, but falling short of dire predictions of a widespread onslaught and crippling power failures. I'm smiling because this is the nice story. This is the happy story of the morning. Eastern Long Island and southern New England took the brunt of the storm, which was still expected to leave more than 2 feet of snow in some areas, the National Weather Service said. Of course, back there in the United States, not where we're sitting, as you can see, this lovely day behind us. But early Tuesday, yesterday, forecasters downgraded projections that said the storm would be historic and of record snowfall, and warnings that amounted to worldwide coverage describing a winter Armageddon. So let's first hear what people in New York, the city, the rest of the world really cares about, felt about the upcoming storm and break it down from there. Let's have a listen.
I'm going back to the office. It's like 4 o'clock. Then we got to take the subway, get home safe, make sure there's food in the cupboards. I'm texting my roommates. We're gonna bundle up. We're gonna be okay.
Yeah, I'm going home now. Yes, I am. Just came from work. They closed early and going home.
It's supposed to be like 2 feet of snow, and that makes me a little nervous.
I think they're over-exaggerated so far.
Yeah.
Been here, done that. We have a nice warm winter so far.
I'm going to keep saying to everyone, take caution, take precautions, be careful. A lot ahead of us. This is literally the calm before the storm. It's about to start in earnest, and when it does, it's going to come in very fast, very hard, and people have to be very, very careful.
More or less on like milk and water, some canned stuff, things that is non-perishable.
I'm preparing, but when I see it, I'll believe it. We've had many of the biggest coming, and they never came. But we had one year where we had one after another, so in the 90s. So who knows?
Okay, joining us from New York is journalist Shira Ava. Shira, good morning, or good night, rather, to you. Yes, listen, we were all expecting snowy Armageddon.
No, a storm of the century.
The century, historic. Exactly, a blizzard. It wasn't even a storm, it was dubbed a blizzard. How are you faring there in Armageddon, Shira? What really happened?
Well, it was no snowpocalypse, I can tell you that. But New York City was definitely spared this time around. We only got 10 inches of snow. They were expecting 2 feet, as people were saying. But, you know, there's difficulty in predicting these major storms. Small errors in prediction of the path of the storm can lead to really large errors in impact. So New York City was spared, but Connecticut and Massachusetts and Long Island and the eastern part of the New England coast was really hit hard, and they did get those 2 feet of snow.
You know, they did get the 2 feet of snow. Of course, you know, as we mentioned, internationally, everybody cares about New York, because, my God, if they need to land there, if they land there and shop. But as Ron said here in the studio, it looks like a regular February. That said, I'm assuming, are there already any kind of reactions from New Yorkers where you had about, you promised us this and we got bupkis?
Oh, definitely.
Yes,
but,
like
you know,
what?
when you walked outside in the street, mostly what you saw was very tired parents playing around in the snow with their kids.
Yes!
Trying to make the best of the situation.
And no, especially as the kids are locked at home. What was shut down in advance? What was shut down when it comes to, you know, the travel warnings, whatnot? Did anything shut down in advance in New York?
Yeah, de Blasio was definitely playing it, you know, the better safe and sorry card this time, which made sense. And the travel ban was starting Monday at 11 p.m., and then it continued to Tuesday morning when they realized that, you know, meteorologists were about 50 to 100 miles off of where the storm actually hit.
But they justified the warnings, right? They didn't back down. They said they were right to shut everything down.
Yeah, well, what are they saying for themselves this morning?
Well, this morning, you know, de Blasio was standing by his decision of playing the safe card, and I tend to agree with them. In these situations, I mean, we had Sandy, which was completely a horrible situation to be in, and you know, you're mayor. You don't want to be in that situation where people are actually in physical danger, and 2 feet of snow, that's not a joke.
No, that's definitely not a joke, and you know, and better safe than sorry. I'm assuming, you know, that there will be reactions that will be coming out throughout the day of disgruntled New Yorkers in terms of the safety precautions that were taken. But Shira, as it looks right now, you're safe and sound and warmly in your apartment, correct? And
yeah.
Yes. Thank you for thank you for joining us this morning from snowy New York. And of course, you know, Ron Friedman with me in studio. I just want to say to you, you know, we can make fun of this, but as you said, it looked like a regular February.
Right. I mean, I lived in Canada, in Toronto. You know, this is looks like. I mean,
from Canada, my God, I know the people who really deal with the cold. But I mean, we're looking at the pictures, and yes, I mean, it looks lovely and snowy. But it wasn't the historic Armageddon news. Apropos press, news outlets around the world were reporting this.
Totally. This was a big story for 2 or 3 days. Everybody was covering it. I mean, definitely the American news. I mean, this was pretty much the only thing on the agenda.
There could be war in Syria, but nobody would care.
Right, and do we know? I don't think we know of any casualties.
Not this morning, and thank God for that. But all the time we have it on these snowy images. They're cutting back straight to us to this beautiful winter picture of a sea and summer behind us. When we get back, we are dealing with art and culture. The Israeli short film Aya, among the Oscar nominees in the Best Live Action Short category. Everybody around here is very proud. We'll take a closer look and meet the main actors in the movie. First, though, let's hear some more of the morning headlines. Welcome back. It is still Thursday, January 28th, 2015. This is still the morning edition. Last I checked, I'm still Levi. Thank you for staying with us. Very few people know this, but I went to film school as a young woman. I know. Look at how far I've gotten. That said, the Israeli, and I have a point with this, the Israeli short film Aya was among the Oscar nominees in the Best Live Action Short category. And the nominees were announced on Thursday in Los Angeles. Why are we telling you this? The short dramatic film Aya was directed by Oded Binun and Michal Brezis. It stars Sarah Adler, the lovely Sarah Adler, who's sitting with me in studio. Good morning to you. And as an Israeli woman who impulsively, this is a movie, pretends to be the driver of a total stranger, a music professor played by Ulrich Thompson, who arrives at the airport. We're very honored, as we mentioned, to have Sarah with us, actor Sarah Adler, and of course, from Denmark shortly by actor Ulrich Thompson. Ulrich, good morning. Good morning to you, Ulrich. There we go.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and we have your lovely co-star with us in studio. And before we take a look, we discuss this very wonderful honor that is being bestowed upon the two of you and the creators of the film. Let's take a look at the film's trailer and break it down from there.
It's Mr. Overby, right?
Yes, it's Overby. You stressed the Y.
Overby. I'm a Aya, by the way. Aya. So you are in a Wittgenstein competition?
I'm a jury member.
Mr. Overby, are you ready for a confession?
You want me to confess?
No, not you. Can you play the piano in my hand? I'm not your driver.
What do you mean you're not my driver?
I was at the airport just waiting there for someone to arrive. And then you came a moment after that.
Joined in studio by Sarah Adler via Skype by Ulrich Thompson. Sarah, I'm going to start with you. So what is the story of the film?
Well, it's the story of an incident that happens that is beyond what your routine has in plan for you, about these two people who are going to spend a very special moment together beyond all odds.
All odds. And she picks him up in the airport, deciding to just pick him up out of the blue, doesn't know him, whatnot.
Exactly, and she doesn't exactly know.
No, great premise. I think on occasion, all of us wanted to do that in the airport instead of picking up the actual person we're waiting for. But
exactly, I think that's why a lot of people resonate with this movie.
Right,
because it's something that we all sort of.
You're sitting there at the airport, you're waiting for your husband. Down comes this. You say, let's take him home. But Ulrich Thompson, I want to ask you. Was that your first time in Israel shooting a film here?
It was. Hey, Sarah.
Hey.
Hello. First of all, this was your first time in Israel. How did you come about to take part in this film? How did they find you?
I'm not sure how they found me. I just I got our script at one point on email via I can't even remember, it was via my agent or something. But anyway, they got hold of me, and I was very pleased, obviously, because I really liked the script. I thought it had a nice poetry in it, you know.
No, it seems like poetry, and of course now the greatest honor. Let's start with you, Sarah. So the announcement comes out, this film is nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah.
Yes, okay, reactions all around. What was your reaction when you heard about that?
I was proud, happy.
Obviously.
Yeah, for our collective efforts leading all the way to something that is kind of, the top of the line. It's totally unexpected. When you do a small film, short film, you think a few people are maybe going to have a chance to see it. And then, very surprising.
No. First of all, clearly it's a very good film. How many, it's been out for quite a while right now. And Ulrich, I'm with you as well. I'm wondering out loud what we all really care about. First of all, are you two going to the Oscars?
I'm in the middle of editing my first feature film, so I'll do my best to be there, to be honest. But it's still up in the air for my part.
Ulrich, I have to say, this is seriously, people listening to us right now. I don't know. I might be busy for the Oscars. I might be doing something else at the time. Is a fabulous. You're a filmmaker yourself?
Yeah, I directed a movie a year back that I'm editing and fiddling with it. And it's the reason. It's because we're getting to the deadline of the edit the year. So
no. That's okay. Don't make excuses. I'm sure. I don't know if you're married.
Excuse. That's the explanation. No, it's fun to go. I've been there a few times before at the Oscars. It's big fun.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's good. Sarah, the Oscars being great fun. Are you going to go?
Most probably. Yeah.
Good. So what are you going to wear?
I don't know yet.
That's the big question.
That's the big question. I'm not a very early planner.
Yeah, but speaking of reactions of just not being proud, the filmmakers, I'm sure but was this even expected to get this far, to that honor? I mean, how are the filmmakers are feeling about this? And
I think, they're very hard-working magicians. So I'm not... I think they know what they do. They work very hard. They're very disciplined, very diligent with everything they do. So they didn't ever let the film down, and they kept, working with it and believing in it. So in that sense...
No, and I think that it's an important thing to note, because Ulrich, even to you, if you're in the midst of editing, your first feature film, it's incredibly hard to make films these days, unless obviously you live in Hollywood or you have the capital, you have the money. Yeah. So when something like this goes so far, as Ulrich said, he liked the script when he got it. When you got the script, did you think this was? What did you like about that character? Why did you say this is something I want to play?
It's something that interests me because it's about someone who does something that she doesn't even expect from herself, and I think there is something interesting about those characters that you have to crack.
Yeah.
You see her as one thing, and then she will turn out to be something different, and it's not black and white. But I think those roles are always very interesting to play, and the dynamic, what would evolve from this encounter. I thought there was something.
What evolves from the
special.
Encounter? I want to know about it before we spill the beans.
Spoiler
alert.
Just some form of intimacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is very hard to imagine. And clearly, somewhat of the same question to you, Ulrich, because your first time in the Middle East, you get the script, you very much like it. What was the appealing bit of it, that it was so off the beat, so to speak?
I just feel that in life, the beautiful bits that happens to you are always in the unexpected, and I like that. It happened to me many times. I mean, not that particular story, but just that, you find yourself somewhere, you have an agenda and all of a sudden something happens and you go like, oh, fuck, this is all bad. And then you realize this is just a beautiful moment. And I like that about life, as such.
No. And then valid points. And Sarah, I mean, this is... in many ways, it's a short, obviously. It's nominated for an Oscar, which is one of the greatest honors. And it's also a film that doesn't deal with Israeli security, the situation here, the military, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, or, what usually, and I hate to say that, what usually sells, right?
Not only, but, it's part of our cinema. Fortunately, we have a lot of filmmakers and a lot of different, voices here in Israel. So I find it's... Israel also communicates with the world with other types of films.
Or it could, at least.
It could, and it does.
And it does. Well, listen, both Ulrich and Sarah, I truly hope this film wins. And Ulrich, as you said, it's these unexpected moments in life, such as being nominated for an Oscar.
Have you watched who you're running against?
Yeah, who are you running against?
I don't know in detail. I saw the names, but I haven't seen the films.
We really hope they lose. Thank you for being with us. Sarah, you're locked in studio as we move along.
Great.
Sarah Adler with us, but it's actually the point of the day when we move to lofty, important ideas, such as, what's really trending on the web. And the web review, the spiral viral that is the web review, usually with Tony Grant on a dental assignment today. But what do we have?
From art, we go to pop culture. The first headline we have Taylor Swift, a fan of, Tony's a fan of her. We have to tribute
Taylor Swift,
the goddess, the icon. Let's give her any descriptions we care.
Good for you that you're wearing pink today. That's the only way to say something like Taylor Swift, the goddess. Yes.
I can carry it off. Anyway, so our headline, she's shaking off Twitter, Instagram hack. So apparently somebody hacked into her accounts, her social networking account. Quite a feat, since she's the fourth most followed Twitter on the planet. 51 million followers.
That's more than the Pope.
Well, more than everybody but three others.
I'm going to say it here because nobody has the guts to say it. Taylor Swift is like ISIS. She's she's everywhere. You can't get away. Yeah, you can't get rid of her. Okay.
But she's being pretty blasé about this. This group called the Lizard Squad, a group of hackers, they claim to have done the hack, and they also claim that they were going to release nude images of her. She said, "Good luck. There's nothing there. You know, there's nothing for you to."
She's squeaky clean American Puritan.
Apparently.
When I see nude pictures of Taylor Swift, I'm going to buy the album. Yes.
So that's Taylor Swift. Another social media.
I have to explain. This is the bit in the show where I tend to embarrass Ron very.
I'm going to turn the color of my shirt.
Because I was like, yeah, okay, I'm moving along.
Yes. Another social media type story. We've got yesterday, Facebook and Instagram went down.
I know.
Prices. Yes, the world didn't know what to do with itself.
For how long did that last? Yeah.
Very, very shortly. But apparently some people took it seriously and called 911. And so the dispatchers in this town of East Bay, they asked callers
You got to slow down on this. Facebook goes down, and people think it's okay and that it makes sense to call the emergency services.
Yeah.
It's a frightening world.
And the police issued a response. He said, our lines are dedicated to handle life and death calls, and even though Facebook is important to a lot of people, it's not a matter of life and death when it stops working.
My Lord,
so
yes.
This is priorities.
Priorities in life. Priorities in life, yes. I could not post a status yesterday at around that same time, and no, meltdown. The world ended. The world ended. There was something I cooked that I wanted to take a picture of. Yes, okay.
All right, cooking.
Speaking of cooking.
Yes. A recently born baby named, wait for it.
Wait for it.
Nutella. The lovely
hazelnut
flavored
not
spread.
Really Nutella.
Nutella. A French girl. A judge in France ruled that that's a no-go. We can't abuse our children by calling them ridiculous names named after spreads.
Where is that judge? That judge should be moved to Hollywood. And no, seriously. And I'm pointing the fingers at people like Gwyneth Paltrow, who named her kid Apple.
At least that's healthy. Sorry,
Parents named their child Nutella, and French court says n'est-ce pas.
Yes, and he renamed the child Ella. Which is much nicer.
No, but maybe, I think that he
took off the nut.
Exactly, he took off. No, he did. He took off the nut.
I don't know,
he's messing with the court.
Maybe the parents had a sponsor deal with the company.
Listen, I've been pregnant in my life. I know you're hormonal, and you open the fridge. What are we going to name the kid? What are we going to name the kid? It's in there. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Okay. Moving back to international politics, but
Please.
On a light note.
Okay.
We know Obama was in India this week. He met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi,
who we love.
He's a cool guy, and focused this time on fashion. The suit that he was wearing. You can see in the photo there, it looks like a standard pinstripe suit.
Yes.
But it's a bit of a narcissistic one, because if you see this image, the stripes are made out of his name, printed in gold.
Oh, wow. A bit of a narcissistic? That could be misunderstood as egomaniacal. So it's basic, and we love him. We love him. He
it's
basically
a fashion statement. Yes.
It's a fashion statement. It's his name in stripes.
Yes.
Wow.
And apparently he's not the first one. Hosni Mubarak did the same thing.
People you don't want to be compared to. Okay.
But yeah, when do you order these? It's got to be an expensive suit.
I promise you, Ron, we'll get you one for the birthday. One last one. Yes.
Okay. This is a story from the Vatican. We all think of peace. We think of the symbols, olive branches, doves.
Yes.
No more doves. There was an incident.
I know why. You know why? I'll tell you. No, seriously, it's a true thing. I'll make this real quick. No more doves, because you shoot them up in the air. You release them in the air, and then you have fireworks come up. Back in the day, in 2000, there was a ceremony in Bethlehem. Okay, and 1,000 doves were released up in the air. They should have stopped it then.
Right.
And then fireworks ensued. And the doves started dying midair and falling on you. I'm not kidding. It's a horrible story. It was very symbolic to the Middle East. Release the doves up in the air and this is never going to work here.
But this isn't a direct response to this. Your story is much worse than what happened last year in the Vatican, that they released the doves, and then a crow and a seagull attacked the doves. And Pope Francis is seen as an animal lover, named after
No, it's beautiful. You know what? It's very metaphorical.
So instead of doves, balloons.
Balloons. Okay. Guys, this is what we leave you with. Sarah Adler, thank you for being with us. I hope you guys win.
Thank you.
It looks phenomenal. When we get back, a stellar week for Israeli startups. We'll take a closer look. Stay with us. First, some more of the morning headlines. morning, and thank you for staying with us. I-24 News Morning Edition on this January 28th, I believe. As we mentioned at the beginning of the show, there is still no war in the northern part of Israel, so everybody can relax. But there are two gorgeous men in my studio. And that's the way I want to end every single morning. One of them being Michael Friedman, but I'm going to go to the better-looking one. We are joined in studio by, get this, Zula CMA tech blogger and startup advisor Hillel Fuld, who is here to talk about the Israeli startup success around the globe, and it was an amazing week, apparently.
Unparalleled. There was
that was so dramatic. I'm excited now. Okay, what happened, Hillel?
There was $910 million in transactions last week in the tech scene, 1 week in Israel. Remember, we're talking about
$910
million.
Why aren't we ever seeing this money, Michael?
I'm not getting a piece of this.
No, we're not getting a piece of this. Tell us more. Yes.
We're talking about a country, need I remind you, the size of New Jersey.
Exactly.
And we're talking about the biggest companies out there, taking part in all these transactions. We're talking about Amazon. We're talking about Dropbox. We're talking about Alibaba, the retail giant. They made an investment in Israel, and it's unbelievable again to see the level of innovation in this tiny little country.
In this tiny little country, and we have, I believe that we have a short clip that tells us the story. Let's take a look and break it down from there.
So, you're reading an article about, say, online shopping tips. You come across something or someone that seems awfully important to the story. You could open a new tab, start a search, click back and forth through those results, and hope for something useful. Or you can just long click, and there you are. Meet Curio. Long click on any word in your browser you're curious about, like this. And up pops this handy info box. It serves up the latest and greatest explanations and conversations from the world's top publishers, social networks, and bloggers. Hop between different sources, just like this. When you're done, just click away and go back to reading. To help highlight some of the most interesting topics, Curio gently underlines a few words on each page you read. No extra tabs, no lookups, no sketchy content, no wasted time, and no distraction. We know you'll enjoy Curio. Click, pop, discover.
So Hillel Fuld still with us for the amazing tech advances, Israeli nation, startup nation that is being gained by Israeli startup Curio. Who are they? What do they do? Why were they so successful this week, and why aren't we working there?
So Curio is an interesting company. They're Jerusalem-based, and the founder is Bob Rosenshine, who previously founded Answers.com, which is in the top.
I even know Answers.com.
Even today, all these years later, it's still in the top 20 sites in the U.S., which is unbelievable. And so his new baby, his new startup is Curio. And it's a really very basic concept. We're all surfing the web, daily, hourly, minutely. And when you want to discover or understand the context of a certain word, what you'll do is you'll open a new tab and you'll search Google, which means that the publisher lost your attention.
Exactly.
So here with Curio, you can long press on a word and it opens up a beautiful overlay and it tells you a real-time Twitter search for that word. It gives you the website of that word. If it's a phrase that has a website, it tells you a Wikipedia search of that word. Everything you need to know about that word.
Wow.
On the spot.
I'm thinking now out loud, and correct me if I'm wrong, because Google is one of the main. Google runs the world. It's Google and Mark Zuckerberg. Basically, right? In many ways.
Not basically.
Not basically. Literally, they run the world. So something like Curio actually is designed to give Google a run for its money in many ways.
Well, I wouldn't say it's not a Google competitor because it does use a Google search. It really is there to serve the user kind of in the short term and in the long term the publisher, because if the publisher can keep the user on page, the reader, without him leaving the page, then that means more time on page, more monetization, and just more attention.
And for us, the users, the lame ducks, the small people, for us, the small people, it's not opening an extra tab,
Correct.
Essentially.
It's very convenient and easy to use, and it's just there. It works.
And it works, my God, yeah. And one more success this week. Give me a specific.
Sure. So just Curio in terms of what they did. They announced their additional round of funding of close to $1 million from some previous investors and other companies that were truly incredibly successful this week. AppsFlyer, a company that I feel like just yesterday they were in the Microsoft Accelerator, just starting their company. And
so do I.
And no, I mean, I've been following this company from day one.
Nod, yes.
It's an amazing company. And they raised, in the last year, basically $27 million. I apologize. They just announced another $20 million round. What they're doing is really very, very important for the ecosystem because, everyone has apps, right? Everyone's developing their apps. And it's a very big challenge when there are so many apps to get your apps noticed, to get your app noticed or discovered on the App Store, right? So the way you do that today is you run ads, whether it's on Facebook or other ad networks, but then it becomes a mess. How do I monitor how well those ads are doing? Right. App tracking, it's called. And so they have one of the most advanced app tracking platforms out there and enables, developers, which is no longer business, as anyone who has an app. to track how their performance is doing on the advertising side.
Yeah, it's exciting, amazing stuff. And my most important question to you is: look at these amazing things being developed technologically. I mean, it is a cutting-edge country when it comes to high tech, isn't it?
Completely.
Right? Isn't it?
It's unbelievable. I mean, another company again. The amazing thing is that these companies, they're small. This is Israel, and yet all the biggest companies out there are tapping into this well of technology. Dropbox, right? You use Dropbox, Dropbox.
Yeah. So
they acquired a company called Cloudon this week. What does Cloudon do? They have a solution to collaborate on the cloud. So if I want to edit a Word document,
okay.
I don't even have to have it installed, on my stored on my phone. I can actually edit the Word document in the cloud. And for Dropbox, it's it's an obvious acquisition because
right.
they are a cloud provider, a cloud storage provider, and so now they have something that will enable their users to collaborate within their platform.
Okay, and when is the app that is going to solve the Middle Eastern mess be invented? Right? I mean, and I'm sitting here thinking it's cutting edge, amazing stuff, and people, as you said, I mean, some of the world's biggest investors are actually putting money in Israel when it comes to startups.
Not
right?
Some, almost all.
All
I
of
mean,
them.
really, almost all the biggest investors out there, from Sequoia to Benchmark Capital, and in Israel itself, there's so many VCs, venture capitalists, and angel investors. It's really rare to find an investor that hasn't invested in Israel in one way or another. Another company this week that really made headlines was a company that does QR code technology. I'm sure you've seen those ugly QR codes.
The QR, yes. Is that the thing that
that you scan with your phone?
That you scan with your phone, yeah. I never really...
Exactly. Yeah. There you go. So they nailed that. Why'd they nail it? Because they said it's an ugly thing, and if I'm Coca-Cola, I don't want to ruin my brand with some ugly codes. They said, well, we'll make it beautiful. And what they did was they said, we can now make a QR code on any visual. The name of the company is Visual Lead, and they got a $5 million investment from Alibaba, which is obviously tremendous company.
Yeah.
The Asian eBay or...
So Alibaba, Amazon, which, by the way, the only thing I know about Alibaba is that I love saying it.
Yeah. Great word.
I'm oozing intelligence here this morning.
So they invested in Israel, Alibaba. That's amazing. And, every big company, really, I mean, Google's obviously here, Microsoft's here, and Yahoo has R&D centers here.
I mean, that's like the happy bit of this morning. And I want to tell you, first of all, thank you for joining us this morning. You will be back because you actually give us the news that can make people smile out of this region on occasion. That happens ever so often. So thank you for being with us this morning. We will release you shortly. Right now, you're locked to your seat because it's the time to move to Chief Political Investigator. Just kidding. We are going to...
Now to sports.
Now to sports.
Way too much fun you guys have here.
Way too much fun? Is it? Way too much fun. Michael Friedman of the Sports Magazine, or the Talking Football. There's Talking Football as well, right? There's Talking Football, something you must watch on I-24 News. But here today to promote and tell us what's coming up and what we need to listen to and think about when it comes to sports. Shoot.
So we're talking about business.
Yes.
No bigger business than what? Football. There's...
True? Really?
The amount of money that goes into these clubs, it's unbelievable.
It's ridiculous.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And, we've been seeing a lot of money coming from the Middle East, where Qatar has been making investments, and Russia. And now someone new, China.
We have a report about this. Let's see the new player in the game, China, with a lot of money and, and the football clubs, and then break it down from there. Let's have a look.
Foreign money has become a major benefactor of European football clubs in recent years. While the investors have been most noticeably from the Gulf states, we are now seeing a new influx of cash from China. The most recent financial input into Spanish football was the investment made by the Dalian Wanda Group, which is the biggest Chinese property conglomerate. The company now owns 20% of Atletico Madrid after paying the club 45 million euros. China's second richest man and Wanda founder, Wang Jilan, believes his company's investment is not just simply business, since football will hopefully create further opportunities in China.
Of course, I hope that more Chinese people can play in top-tier clubs in Europe. This is my goal and why I invested in Atletico, and maybe even consider investing in other clubs. Because if I invest, I am the stockholder, so if I speak, they have to listen to me. They will pay more attention to me, and the players will grow faster, and there will be more opportunities for them.
Atletico Madrid are fighting to stay as strong as competitors Real Madrid and Barcelona, who both have giant sponsors pumping money into the club. This new deal is very beneficial for Atletico, as they racked up over 500 million euros in debt. But besides the financial gains, the Spanish side is also looking forward to giving something back to their new investors.
Bueno, pues es una noticia y una colaboración
This is very important news. Wanda is one of the world's most important companies at the moment. For us, it is very significant that we'll make possible the dream of many children in China by bringing them to Spain to get them started in a magnificent sport like football and to be able to train them not only in Spain, but also here in China.
While Wang made clear his intentions to be part of this club, he will not have much influence on Atletico's day-to-day operations.
His first idea is not to run the club, is not to take a sport decision, it's just to help. And my commitment with him is try to help him to improve the Chinese kids' performance. Then I think it's nice for both.
Although there appears to be good intentions, once again, it's foreign money continuing to find its way into European football.
Joined by Michael Friedman of the Sports Magazine, which, by the way, is on I-24 News every single day at 1940, that's 7:40 in military speak, which you should write. Michael, rich people, Chinese now in the game. Tell me about Jian.
This guy is the second richest man in China.
Which means that...
He's got a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a billionaire. He's doing well. And now he's putting in 20%. And he's hoping by 2017 to continuously put in more and more money. And
now, when you say the Chinese are getting into the game, it's into the football clubs overseas in Europe, or they're trying also to progress the game in China itself?
Well, in China itself, this guy, he believes that this will help revolutionize football in his own country. So as much as it's a great thing for Atletico Madrid, who's receiving, 20% stake, this is also a big plus for the country of China, who will, in the future, hopefully have a better league, more football players even maybe coming into Spain.
Well, if you are about to become the leader of the free world, you need to be strong in football.
In sports in general, they want to have the Winter Olympics even. So, so it's something that
Winter Olympics 2022.
2022, they're hoping to have, which would be a first to have both the winter and the summer. So that's also nice. So the sports in China, it's growing, and
now you have a really
bigger.
quick another story for us is
the FA Cup. Another dramatic weekend.
FA Cup. We have time for another report about the FA Cup. Let's take a look.
When it comes to surprises, the FA Cup never disappoints. The fourth round of the competition left many of the Premier League heavyweights in shock. Premier League leader Chelsea was stunned at home by 3rd Division Bradford, losing 2-4. This is the first defeat in 5 games for the Blues, and it is even more embarrassing than the 5-3 loss against Tottenham on New Year's. However, if Hazard, Terry, Fabregas, and Costa were in the squad, the club could have avoided the terrible failure. A difficult match to swallow for the great Jose Mourinho before gearing up against a title race competitor, Manchester City.
In the history of this competition, this happens to every team now and again. For me, it was the first time. For Chelsea, it doesn't happen a lot. And I think is unacceptable.
This was also the case for the defending champions Manchester City, who did not expect to fall 0-2 to 2nd Division side Middlesbrough at the Etihad Stadium. This is the 3rd consecutive game without a win for the Sky Blues, but City's coach remains positive with his players.
I have to say we have so different 2 games in the same match. Before the score, I think that we did it very well. After that, I think that Middlesbrough deserved to continue in the cup.
2 other prestigious clubs also failed against their visitors. Tottenham lost 1-2 to bottom of the Premier League, Leicester.
During the game we play well, but you need to kill the game because in the second half we create chance. But always we give the possibility to be alive, Leicester. And in the last 10 minutes I think we made some mistake and we are out of the FA Cup, and for that I'm very disappointed.
And Southampton, 3rd in the Premier League, finds itself out of the FA Cup after losing 2-3 to Crystal Palace. As many of the top teams embarrass themselves in the 4th round of the FA Cup, it continues to leave the fans in awe. This may just be the most mysterious cup in the world of football.
Okay, I just want to say, Michael Friedman, that this was a report about how Chelsea lost, but yesterday they won.
They won yesterday, thankfully, beat Liverpool. They'll go to the finals of the Capital One Cup, so it's most important.
As 2 people who bleed blue.
We bleed.
Yes. No, that's the happy note of the morning. Chelsea won yesterday, and they're moving along, and with that, and you will be there covering us for us in person. Just kidding. But don't forget.
I wish.
You wish, exactly. Don't forget to come back always with the sports news, because that's the place to watch Michael Friedman in the mornings. Do not forget to watch us, I-24 News Morning Edition, to more morning to start your day. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, all those social networks which supposedly are working today. And, of course, have a great day.